Shut up and sit down.
The current state of politics is unsustainable, politically, economically.
You still have distrust there.
We all come from very different places.
Man, we don't want the government to do a damn thing.
We deserve better.
People have to have the information in front of them.
It is about supporting, platforming, and assisting the people who are out here actually doing the fight.
There you go. Like, just promote people who are doing something. Volunteer to work with people who you like. And
just take an issue that's important to you and do something.
You are part of that declaration against tyranny.
This conversation gives me a little more hope for the future.
The one, the only
Fight for Liberty. This is the cherry on top.
This and every other episode of Fight Club is sponsored by Blood of Tyrants Wine. If you want to enjoy a nice night in while also sipping the blood of your enemies and taking down the tyrannical state, go on to bloodoftyrants.wine, order about a dozen bottles because you're going to need it for the holidays, and use promo code F4L and you'll get $5 off your first order. Help promote the show and the network, and I will love you significantly more going forward. But without further ado, we have some awesome guests for you guys tonight, so I'll bring them all up one by one. Let's see if we can make this work. First and foremost, not foremost, just first, we have the Cop, host of Biblical Anarchy and a host of other shows that I will have him pitch at the end. The one, the only, Jacob Daniel Winograd, back on the show. Jacob, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me back on, and thank you for touting my, number one claim to fame, which is that I collect podcasts like Pokemon cards.
I every time I see you, it's just one more.
It's just you got it. I'm like Ash. What? I don't watch Pokemon anymore. I guess something recently happened with Ash, and he's no longer the full the main character of that show anymore. But it's like. But that's gonna be me, you know what I mean? Like, I got to go out on top. I'm gonna get on every podcast and have like 50 of them myself, and then I can retire.
There you go. That's the ultimate goal. Next up, one of the most interesting people I had the pleasure of meeting this year. One of the creators of So Far Sounds, co-founder of Liberty Live, Mrs. Joanna Jurgens. Welcome to the show. And last but not least, you might recognize her from the clip in the intro or the hundreds of speeches she's given at Liberty events around the country. She's working on streamlining psilocybin production with advanced micrology, and she is your trip sister, Avens O'Brien. Guys, I'm super excited for this show. I've been talking to a bunch of my friends about it because, I'm just excited to get a whole bunch of advice as I want to say newlywed, but it's been over 6 months now, and I don't know how long you can call yourself. Okay, yeah,
you're a baby. You're adorable.
Feels a lot shorter than 6 months, but we've passed that point, and I'm like, wow, we're really chugging along here. Okay, not long. We'll actually get into that. the first question I wanted to ask, just to kind of set a basis for everyone's answers going forward. How long have you been in your current relationship? What is your relationship status, and how did you guys meet, get together? Like, short version. Jacob, you want to start off?
Sure. So I married my high school sweetheart. I met her my junior year of high school, and we started dating during my senior year. And so I don't know anything about adult dating. When I, growing up watching my friends go through that, and then when people complain about it to me and stuff, I'm just like, I don't know what's so difficult for you guys. No, but I got extremely lucky. I was an idiot in high school. I'm still an idiot, but I was more of an idiot in high school, and I managed to meet an amazing woman who took pity upon me and put up with me being incredibly stupid and took the time for me to get my act together. And yeah, we've been together for, oh boy, we got together in 2010. Yeah, 2010. So it's been 12 years. Yeah, we've been together for 12 years. We've been married for 8 years. So that's kind of the background there.
I guess I'm the old fogey of this whole thing. I've been married 17 years, and I think we were together 3 years before that, so it's right around 20 years. And firstborn was a honeymoon baby, so it's always easy to remember exactly how long we've been married. Like, okay, how old's the boy?
Same. That's how that is exactly what I do.
That's awesome. Yeah, exactly. You never forget that one. It makes it so easy.
Yep.
David and I were actually, my husband's name is David too. We met on Match.com, and we were, from what I believe, one of the first couples that actually got married from, well, I always say Match.com and let's just Match now, but back then it was Match.com. We're one of the first couples that met through there before it was cool, when everyone just thought we were weirdos for meeting online.
Sorry, my internet just did a thing. I'm here. Okay, good. Of 2012, we met on Facebook, actually, through mutual friends. We met in person a month later. We had our first date a month after that, and then we have been together for 10 years now. We aren't legally married, but I think we've kind of reached that, like, this point of, like, we're doing this intentionally together for, presumably, like, the rest of our lives, or as long as it makes sense to us. And we have certain philosophies about that, but I would say that that's been about 4 or 5 years now. So that would be kind of the contextual timing for me.
Can you guys hear David? I can't hear David.
I can't hear David. That's like, this is my internet.
Wow, that was great. I muted myself on the microphone, so I couldn't see. I was searching through all the settings on the computer, but I clicked it here. So you guys didn't hear me like light the joint like 7 times in a row. No,
I'm already,
That explains why you didn't hear me say, "Hey, Avens, what about you?"
I didn't. I didn't hear it at all. I was like,
none of us heard you, but yeah.
All right, what I was gonna say, or what I actually said, but no one heard me. Libertarians often get branded as, kind of outcasts, and therefore very cynical and emotionally closed off and very socially kind of awkward. I know that's a trope that we all kind of have heard. But I definitely have experienced a lot of the opposite, given a lot of the libertarians that I've met. And I was talking to one of my good friends about this episode and, how excited I was. And she was telling me that learning about liberty and the philosophy of it over the last couple of years has positively affected how she sees relationships and how she treats people. And so I'm wondering, from your guys' experience, have you had similar experience to my friend, or has the delve into politics and the red and black pills kind of overdosed you and made you a little bit more closed off?
I think in general, libertarians are less judgmental of other people, right? So even something that we may disagree with our spouse or significant other on, it's less of a big deal than to something. I talked to somebody like David's a Republican, and he's still on the liberty side of things, but there's definitely some things that we disagree on. And I think as a libertarian, I'm used to being disagreed with a lot. So it kind of makes it easier that, like, okay, yeah, we disagree on that. So what? Move on.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. I find my wife is very like apolitical, and so the only contention that we usually have is like, how do you not care about this? And she's like, I don't know. I just don't. But she doesn't have any like strongly held beliefs that we disagree on. She only has like 3 or 4, and they're like abortion rights, gun rights, and a handful of other things that I'm like, yeah, we're good there.
Just the most difficult ones to deal with a lot of people.
Right. So I want to go through kind of like a few different key philosophies and kind of talk about how they can overlap with healthy relationship ethics and just behaviors, starting with the non-aggression principle, because I feel like that's like the easiest one to talk about is having that within a relationship. What do you guys think?
So I want to start with one. Go ahead, Jacob.
The question is the overlap between the non-aggression principle and how we, how we can see that in our relationships. Do I got the question right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think hopefully anyone in a relationship isn't like committing aggression against one another, but you can go a little bit deeper than that because I think the non-aggression principle should be seen as more than just a, how would I phrase this? You should seek to be more than just the least shitty person possible, right? Like you should try to be, if anything, like, beyond just doing the bare minimum of not aggressing against people, you should try to look at the underlying philosophy and sort of like spirit behind the non-aggression principle and let that apply in your life. So, in my relationship, for example, I guess this is where I'm going to take it. I do my very best to not initiate conflict with my wife unless it's like absolutely necessary. Like there is actually a problem and we need to solve it. But there's a lot of things that you kind of learn the longer you're in a relationship. You're like, you know what? This thing my wife is doing, she's not doing it to hurt me. She's not doing it to upset me. I'm just annoyed by it, or I'm just being sensitive to it. And picking a fight here is actually me sort of being the quote unquote aggressor in this situation. And I just need to either A, let it go, or B, if I can't let it go, I need to cool off and just talk to her about my feelings rather than pick a fight. And it's sort of like there's that, what is that weird saying? Like your relationship, people sometimes say you're in a good relationship if you're fighting all the time. And I kind of used to sort of believe that, but my wife has kind of corrected me and saying like, we're not fighting. We're just talking. Like, why do people have to frame just having conversation and working out issues as a fight? Like, it's not really a fight. It's just like people doing like relationships.
Having healthy disagreements.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So you learn to I'm thinking of a Gilmore Girls reference. My wife loves Gilmore Girls, and there's this episode where Rory's grandmother is telling her to leave your fight face at home, and that's what we tell my wife and I tell each other. We're like, hey, leave your fight face at home, okay? I mean, we're all at home, but it's like just
that's
if we get into a
racist
disagreement,
against
it's
my
like,
people.
Yeah. David has to walk around in a paper bag of shame.
That's right.
He can't show his fight face.
That's probably for the best at most public gatherings. I find my like really shitty toxic workaround for like not being the aggressor is that like if I'm mad about something, I'll just wait until she starts a fight and then I'll just like add on.
Yes. Yes.
My husband does
Yes. Yes. I've been there. No, that's easy to do because I used to do that. I'd be mad about something and then you forget about it until she does something. Then she gets mad at you for something that you did, and you go, "Oh, you're gonna be mad at me about this? What about what you did?" And yeah, that always works out well, doesn't it?
If I let it go, you should have let it go. And so if you're not gonna let it go, I'm not gonna let it go.
Oh yeah, no. So this is one of the things I've struggled with, and my wife used to say this to me all the time, and still does. It's like, Jacob, we're different people. It's like just because something doesn't bother you doesn't mean it doesn't bother me, and that is something that, you know, that is something I think that is a little bit harder for maybe libertarians to understand, or at least it's harder to connect to libertarian philosophy, because in libertarian philosophy, we think like it's all about reciprocity. It's all about equality of rights, right? So when you get into a marriage, you're like, okay, well, we have to just treat each other equally. And it's like, well, I mean, you should be equal in your, I don't know, like status in terms of like respecting each other and having an equal say, but you're not the same. You're not the same people, and you're going to have different triggers, different likes and dislikes, and different love languages, different communication styles. And so like you have to actually do work to sort of understand your partner and how they're different than you.
And I think the most important one there is in how you're raising your family and your kids. I think that's really the only times David and I'll have disagreement that really kind of gets me is when we have a disagreement on something to do with the kids, because then it's bringing someone else in.
It's also the one that gets heated the most, or the fastest.
Because it matters the most to both people.
Yeah, I think one of the big things for Judd and I was realizing that we kind of agreed with each other about like how we wanted to raise kids and like and what the non-aggression principle kind of meant to us in this in that context, but also in like argument context. It's funny as Jake was talking about it. Judd and I, thankfully, we have very similar views about things like we both believe in de-escalation. Both of us have no tolerance for yelling. So like we will never raise our voices, but we like will have, you know, discussions and arguments that aren't, you know, they're not fights. And we're big on like, this isn't a fight. This is just like us hashing things out. And we will really hash things out. We are not afraid to do so. But it's funny because he and I have kind of different, like when something happens that like, oh, we should talk about this thing. I'm the person that's like, okay, I need like I just want a few minutes to like cool off, maybe like, you know, like get out of the headspace that I'm in while I'm upset about this thing, and then come back to it after I've kind of decided whether or not it's worth being upset about. And Judd is like, something's bothering you, let's talk about it right now. Let's talk about it right now. What do you want to talk about? Come on. Like I don't want you to be like, you know, holding this in. Come on, tell me what's going on. Let's work it out. And I'm like, so that took some adjustment, because like, I would have to be like, hey, I'd like 20 minutes to just like let this de-escalate inside me so I'm not defensive or you're not defensive. Like I'd like us to like us to be a little bit removed from like the emotional concern in this moment. And he's like, oh, just, you know, you could just unplug the emotion from it. I'm like, yeah, no.
We're both like that, thank goodness.
Yeah, that is one thing that I think was something that took some time to get used to, because like, you know, like something had happened out at an event and then we'd be driving home and I would be like, I'm gonna be quiet for a little bit. He'd be like, oh, you're being quiet, something's wrong, what's going on, tell me about it. And
I wonder go ahead, you can. Well, because I wonder if he is bringing similar baggage that I brought, because I used to be the same way, and it was because I was in relationships with people who, like, when they would be mad at you, they wouldn't tell you, and then they would never tell you. And so that it's kind of like learning to, like, you know, it's okay to give someone a little bit of space. Now, like, if you never, ever, ever talked about your problems, that would be a problem. Right. But you have to kind of learn to trust your partner to be like, you know what, like, they will come and talk to me if it's a big deal, you know. And once you kind of practice that a few times, it got easier for me. Although then I went, you know, the problem is it's like, I don't know if this is a libertarian thing or not, but I tend to do I tend to go really hard in one direction or the other. And it's like I went from we need to talk about this now to like, oh, my wife needs space. My wife needs space. And she's like, well, no, hold on. You can't just like, it's kind of like it's the Goldilocks problem, right? It's like too hot, too cold, just right. And that's a lot of, it's like trying to, I mean, a lot of it is like, there is no rule book. And like, there's just kind of like a general, it's just like understanding that like your partner is like, as complex as we view ourselves, our partner is also like that. And so like they're not, surprised, they're not robots. They're not going to be necessarily the same day to day, month to month, year to year. Like some things are the same, but some things change and some things are inconsistent. And I learned to roll with the punches a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely have that same struggle with my wife, because she's, one of my biggest flaws is like I'm very passive aggressive, but it's kind of like it's like weaning myself off sometimes of actually being aggressive. Like if I'm in a really bad mood, I can just kind of like dial it back to passive aggressive and then dial it back a little bit more to like less like and then into just like actually having a good day. But she's like really empathetic and intuitive, and so she will pick up on any, like, even I will just breathe wrong and she'll be like, what's wrong?
Isn't that annoying?
Breathed wrong. And the worst part is 90% of the time she's right, and I have to just lie to her face, just be like, nothing, it's fine, because she just won't let me not be aggressive.
So my wife and I have this discussion a lot because my wife's the same way. She's incredibly like empathetic and intuitive, and so she'll know when I'm upset. What I've been telling her lately is like, listen, a lot of times I get upset for just like stupid shit, and I know it's like I'm angry, but I know in the back of my head it's like, this is stupid shit. Let it go. But then in the moment, my wife's like, why are you upset? What's wrong? It's like, and so it's like it's kind of full circle. I used to be that way with her, and now she can be that way with me. Where it's just like, listen, I'm annoyed, I'm angry, I know it's stupid. Give me like 5 minutes to just like let that pass, and then I can talk about it. And you know what I mean? Like a 5-minute rule is a really good rule. Like and having kind of like there's one of my favorite sayings is that prevention is better than cure. Like having conversation. One of the best things that happened, and I learned to do this after I went through some counseling for myself, and then my counselor helped me with kind of like learning how to communicate better in my relationship. And one of the things that I learned to do was like, don't wait for the blow-ups to happen. Like have a conversation with your partner and be like, hey, we have been in this pattern of getting into these arguments and fights and we don't communicate well. Let me explain to you what's going on in my head when we're having these things happen. You explain to me what's going on. Let's find a way to, when we start kind of like converging on those kind of things happening, to like, we can communicate with each other and be like, hey, this is what's going on with me. This is what's going on with you. And from a place of knowing what's going on in each other's heads, we can communicate better.
Yeah. It's funny because I know that part of Judd's poke, like, I need to know what's wrong right now, has slightly to do with like we work together and we're entrepreneurs and we have business partners who will sometimes, not necessarily like come forth with what's bothering them. And then it, he's used to this in like lots of other contexts, not just relationships, but like, just like, is there somebody I'm working with, or is there somebody who's a client that has a problem and is not like waiting for things to build up. And so like, he's always like, wait, no build up. Like, let's just deal with the problem right away. And it's funny because like because we work together, we work together, we live together, we like run a company together, we're in a relationship together. We also kind of like, and we also try to like enjoy each other's company the rest of the time. But we also have like right now our work-life balance is so messed up because we have 2 companies we're working for. So what ends up happening is like he'll come to ask me a work question, and then I'll like bring up something. I'll be like, oh, by the way, like this thing, do you want to go to this party tonight? Someone invited us to. Or like I'll ask a social question and he'll be like, I really only have the headspace for work. And so he and I had to start like articulating that like that we have different times for different channels. And so we'll be like, hey, work channel right now. Let's talk like love channel later. Let's talk, let's talk like plans channel later. And it's so tricky because we're so enmeshed. And so for us, like there's a lot of that, like, hey, tonight, can we actually spend some time just like chilling out and not worrying about work or anything that's like too serious and just enjoy each other? Yes, let's do that. And we've gotten very good at like articulating that very explicitly because of the fact that like we have so much work life meshed in such a way that's like that could be detrimental, and we had to learn like coping mechanisms for that. But the other thing for us is that like not only do we we try not to let things build up. So if there's like a problem, it could be that like this one goes away after we've like worried about it a little bit but didn't talk about it, and then like something comes up again, like, oh, this is the second time I've been upset about this, let's hit it right now. But it's funny because Judd and I also, I blogged about this, I think David just read that, is that I credit the use of psychedelics for Judd and I like deeply, like we get to this point, like once a month we take psychedelics, and like sometimes we'll be like, we're gonna have a fun time together, and they'll be like, okay, we need to talk about some stuff. And the cool thing about psychedelics is they make you not defensive. So like both of us can just kind of be like, here's some things that are bothering me, and we just get it out, and then we're like, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't realize that was bothering you. And then and we're like not defensive, we just intake all of the like signals of like, oh shit, like I'm so sorry, I have not been thoughtful of you, and you have not been thoughtful of me, whatever. And then like we come out of like, then we get to have fun in our trip, and then on the other side we're like, oh, thank goodness that like that thing was stewing like 3 weeks and it is no longer stewing, because we just had it out in a very loving, vulnerable, sweet way instead of an angry way. So that's honestly, drugs are just how we cope.
There we go.
It never works.
I used to, like, in some of my past relationships, I was a lot like, we're talking about with the, like, have to get it out now. And part of that honestly came from, Jacob, you'll appreciate this one, from the Bible verse, never let the sun go down on your anger. And so, especially if it was towards the end of the day and my girlfriend wanted to just, address it tomorrow, I'm like, but no, the Bible says don't do that.
But really it just means, but even it doesn't mean you have to talk about it then. It just means like try your best not to go to bed angry. It doesn't mean that everything's resolved, because it's like sometimes you can't solve something, and that's something my wife and I have learned to do a better job at, is like, and this is especially on me, is that I would be upset when she would come to me with a problem that I couldn't solve, and I would take that personally, and because I'd be like, because I had this false expectation or interpretation of what she was doing. I thought that my wife would come to me with an issue, and that it was like, okay, and I have to fix this. But 90% of the things you're coming to me with, I can't fix, because they're just like, we're in a tough situation in life right now, or the circumstances just aren't aligning for me to be able to do anything about it. And then I eventually came to realize, through her, she had to tell me probably 3 or 4 times for it to get through my head, was that, no, I don't need you to fix it. I just need you to be like, if it's your fault, just apologize for it. And if it's not your fault, just be like, yeah, this sucks. Yeah. And just like, can you just like let me vent and let me talk about things that I'm upset about? And whether it's your fault or not is like, it's kind of secondary. I mean, if it is your fault, like take ownership of it. Even if it's something you can't immediately fix, take ownership of it. But either way, it's like, that's kind of part of, talk about the Bible, we're called to bear each other's burdens. And that's something that a married couple is supposed to, do, is just like, sometimes you can't solve a particular problem. You just have to be there for each other.
David's really good at doing that. Just when something's going on, he'll just I'm usually like, I sleep myself, go sit down somewhere, I'm angry, and he'll just like, do you want to talk about it? Do you want me to leave you alone? Do you want to just let it out? And he's really good at that. It's
that classic solution. Do you want solutions, or do you want sympathy? Like I've had moments where like I've been complaining about something nothing to do with Jeb whatsoever, but I'll be like, oh man, like my car insurance company's annoying the shit out of me, and he'll be like, and I'll be venting, and he'll be like, well, this is how you solve that problem. I'm like, no, I've already done no, shut up, stop. I'm just venting. Tell me that like, oh, I understand how frustrating that is for you. And then I'll deal with it. Like, I'm just venting about something that's bothering me. I do not need you to solve my problem, especially because you're going to tell me to do something I already did.
That's the
like
worst.
Well, and you're like, oh no, just tell your insurance company this. And that didn't work. Like that, I did that. I'm on top of this shit.
If you suggest something I haven't tried and that's actually a brilliant idea and actually solves my problem, even if I was looking for sympathy, I'll usually take the solution if it's a legit solution. If you suggest the first thing I tried 2 days ago, fuck off.
It'll make me mad, and I'll be like, it's funny because actually this has happened before where I've like specifically been like, here's this thing that's pissing me off. It's just really tough. I'm gonna get through it. And Judd will be like, have you done this? I'm like, fucking yes, obviously I did that. And I had to like really like, I had to be like, and not respond with like, fuck you, of course I did that. What I actually learned to say, and this was a moment of like vulnerability for both of us, is I was like, honey, thank you for like, I know you're trying to solve this problem. I have tried that. And I'd like for a moment, when you try to solve my problem for me with obvious solutions that I clearly tried, it makes me feel like you're assuming my incompetence at solving this problem myself. And I had to articulate that. I was like, you just, when you jump right in with like easy solutions that I've probably already tried, I start to feel like you're questioning my competence, and I want to feel like you trust my competence. And so first I want you to sympathize. And then secondly, you can say like, do you want some ideas? And like, then we can go through it. But it was interesting because like, we'll have moments where we've each given each other advice. And then the other one is like, excuse me, of course. And it was real. Like, I was like, you know what? The reason we get defensive and the reason that we struggle is because we feel like we're questioning each other's competence to have figured that out already. And once we like recognize, like, let me have the utmost faith in your competence to have done this correctly. Like, we don't get all like preachy with the solutions, and we don't get all defensive with the asks, with the response. So it was like one of those little things that articulating what we felt we were actually triggering in there was important.
Yeah. We sometimes find ourselves arguing even though we're saying the same thing. So for example, there'll be a conference coming up, and so I think y'all know I take my daughter to a lot of conferences. We go out of town a lot, but something might be coming up, and I'll say to him, I'm not going to take her to this particular one. I think it's just too expensive, or there's no good flights or anything. And then he'll be like, yeah, but you can't take her because she'd be missing school. I'm like, well, yeah, but I think she'll learn more at the conference than she would at school. And so we start arguing, even though the answer is I'm not going to take her, but we will argue over why I'm not going to take her. And then finally, after we like get at each other for a little bit, we're like, we're saying the same damn thing. We find ourselves, that's a very common situation with us, that we argue over the same output.
Well, and that's so probably 20 or 30% of the arguments I get into with my wife are that we have completely different, and drag it out over like 30. We gotta be self-aware. That's what we do. But yeah, I'm used to. I mean, I was in speech and debate from the time I was in like 8th grade, and then I went into politics. You know, first as a Democrat, now as a Libertarian, and now as a podcaster. And so it's like I'm just always used to like giving these long explanations, and my wife is just like, you know, give me like the 2-sentence summary, and like, you know, don't be like preachy at me, or don't be like, she gets so annoyed when I feel the need to like preface something because like, I don't want her to like misinterpret what I'm saying, or I feel the need to like do some special like end around way to get to the conclusion. And so that's what causes a lot of our fights, and that's one of those things that's like you have to just learn to, because it's like I can't necessarily change my communication style, because like it's what makes sense to me. Like in my head, it's like I feel like I'm being perfectly clear, and then when my wife explains something to me, I'll misunderstand her because I'm overthinking it and overcomplicating it. And some of it is like just learning. I think a lot of problems come from trying to figure out a way to be a couple, but like maintain a sense of autonomy within the relationship and like individuality. And that's tough. Like when you're with the same person every day, all the time, doing the same things all the time, it's like trying to find a way to be a couple but yet two separate individuals is a lot harder than it sounds. Because and I think some of this can be blamed a little bit on, maybe a little bit of like some Christian impact on culture, because I think some people take the whole like two will become one theme from the Bible and like misapply it or like over apply it, and just kind of like, you and your spouse have to become the same person. No, don't get me wrong. My wife and I are very much attuned. Like we can like immediately know what the other one's going to say, or like we'll say the same thing at the same time. But even though like we're in tune with each other because we know each other very well, we're different. We're complementary, I think, but we're different. And we have to learn to like focusing on those differences and how, that's what attracted you to the person in the first place. But it's like you get to a point in a relationship where I think like you just expect for some reason that you'll be able to coast. And it's like there is no cruise control setting in a relationship. Like you have to be hands-on and using your turn signals and watching your lane and being proactive.
Yeah. I just want to point out before I get to my next question that you just identified politically as a podcaster. You were like first as a Democrat, then as a Libertarian, now as a podcaster.
What's the difference between a Libertarian and a podcaster?
Anyway.
So this is something Jacob already kind of mentioned, but to the opposite degree. Something Libertarians have a lot of experience with is like kind of breaking binaries and that kind of like too much, too little kind of Goldilocks conundrums. So I'm wondering, have you guys had any success in your relationships that you can kind of identify to your experience kind of breaking those binaries and thinking outside of the box?
I could jump in on David. I feel like you're looking at me. you just asked that because you did just read a blog about my relationship. I mean, well, because Judd and I really went a very like non-traditional route of our relationship. I mean, like not the meeting on Facebook, but like Judd and I just took a very different route. Like I occasionally go on like podcasts, or I'll listen to podcasts of like female friends of mine, and they'll be like giving advice about like, like best ways to do relationships. I'm like, we did all of those things differently. Like we when we got into our relationship, like we opted, we were in an open relationship when we first started dating. We were kind of both like obsessively independent to the point where it was like, for us, it was, we loved each other and we wanted to make it work, but we were like, oh God, but then I'm part of a unit. Like that, like it was really tough for us. And there was like a lot of growing pains as we kind of developed our finding our thing. And then, we've ended up in a functionally monogamous relationship now, like, but it's been like 5 years, but we had this period of non-monogamy. We had very different kind of ways of like the way that people would kind of identify their relationships. And we were just like, no, we're going to do this differently. And then, we've moved in together, and we, people think this is very weird, but we have separate bedrooms because we are just like, so like, we need our space. We work together and live together. Like it's like good for us to have a completely like separate like space. I mean, we even like, we took a break halfway, like not halfway through our relationship, 2 years into our relationship, we took a break for a year. And all of these things, like people are like, oh, that's going to mark the end of a relationship. It's like, no, that just made us stronger. Honestly, that just made us like better at like, because we decided to forge this ourselves. The point in which we decided about 5 years ago, we're just like, we're going to do this deliberately. And so we're going to take the learnings that we got from the last 5 years. We've put together something that I love, and we both find extremely rewarding and extremely valuable and extremely long lasting. And like we feel like this is it. This is for good. But it was interesting because like we both like when we started dating, Judd was like, I'm never going to commit to just one woman. And I'm like, this was like our first date. It was our first date. And he was like, yeah, I don't do monogamy. I'm never going to live with a partner. I never spend Valentine's Day with a partner. And he told me all these things. And I was like, cool, me too. Like, I was just totally like, whatevs. Like, I'm whatever. And then literally 6 months later, Judd was like, hey, Valentine's Day is in 3 days. Would you like to do something? And I was like, excuse me? Didn't you say you never spend Valentine's Day with a girl? And he was like, yeah, but I want to spend it with you. And it was a really like it was a really sweet moment. We had a lot of little sweet things, you know, that like we both kind of were like, you know what, like we don't have to be like we've been super independent all this time, and we can both kind of like embrace, you know, these interdependencies and these like loving, like I choose you, and like there's nothing wrong with I choose you. There's a problem with like you do this thing. Like we're very like the way that we do our thing, even like the fact that we won't legally get married, and there's like reasons for that you know they can combine to like, you know, just how we feel about the government and how we feel about like legally how that impacts like things like investment in business and things like, there's all sorts of stupid like little things, but for us it's like that, like we say that like we choose our relationship every single day because that's what, like, because choosing it is what keeps us together. And like it's not that I mean it would be hard at this point to dissolve our lives connection, but like we're not legally married, so the like that particular roadblock, that's not gluing us together, because we're like, no, we have to choose to like to tie these strings together, and here we are, we're very happy with the ties. So I guess that would be my dedication to the, you know, libertarian principle of like doing it our fucking own way and breaking the binaries, whatever that means.
Jacob, Joanna, any thoughts on the kind of out of the box thinking within relationships?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, you know, finding, I mean, it's funny because like on the surface, my relationship seems to fit into very traditional roles. You know, I work a 9 to 5, actually it's more like a 6 to 7, but and my wife stays at home and homeschools the kids. But you know, we kind of found each other because like that's kind of what we both wanted to do. Like my wife didn't want to go to college. She was like, I want to have kids and raise a family, and we weren't even libertarian yet, but from the time we got together, we kind of both knew we wanted to homeschool kids and keep them out of the public schools because we just knew how bad they were for children. And so, you know, we have like a common cause, right? And I think it's kind of like our relationship rallies around that cause. But then if you look at like us interacting, my wife is way more the lead in like the way our family unit runs than I am. It's like, you know, it doesn't really fit that traditional, or at least what people would say is traditional in terms of like, you know, my circles being more of a, you know, in the Christian evangelical world, they're like, well, the man has to be the leader. And I'm just like, well, I mean, I think men and women, the father and the mother, husband and the wife should both lead. And that comes in different ways. Like, I think one of the best ways I can lead in my family is to show all of my children, especially my 3 sons, hey, sometimes just shut up and listen to the mom, or shut up and listen to your wife, and don't feel like you have to like take command of every situation, because I know like there are some areas that I know I'm good in, and there's other areas where I stop and go, hey, you know, now I'll stop and ask for help. Now you also have to be careful not to fall into the trap of just like feigning incompetence to get out of doing things, because that is an easy trap to fall into doing, to just be like, oh, you do it better than me, so I'm not going to try. No, it's like the things that I know my wife is better at me on, you know, I've learned to try to be like, hey, you do this. Like my wife is way better at cleaning than I am, and I had a very spoiled upbringing. I didn't have to do a lot of cleaning growing up, and so like I try to do things and I feel like I'm trying really hard to do them, but I get so little done. And then like she'll clean for like 20 minutes and the place is immaculate. So while I'm cleaning, when she's like taking care of the kids, I'll be like, hey, what am I doing wrong? Like, why is this going so slow? And then she'll chime in and explain what I'm doing wrong. Yeah, it's I don't know. It's like, I think the key, and this kind of goes to what Avens was talking about, is just like, don't be afraid of like doing something just because you feel like it's going to give you some sort of label, or like, oh, I'm giving up my individuality, or I'm being part of some kind of group or something like that. But also like, don't fall in. You have to balance that, right? You don't want to overcorrect by just like outright rebelling against like any kind of one of those things, but you also don't want to like fall into the trap of like you only think along those lines in terms of those binaries. So I think it's just about like, that's what true individualism is. I think it's like just being your authentic self and not acting like and just doing what comes naturally, rather than like putting it through a filter of either I have to do, like, it would be wrong for me to put everything in the filter of my relationship has to fit into these Christian evangelical, traditional roles of what a husband's supposed to do and a wife is supposed to do. And I think it would be an equal error in the opposite way if we were in a relationship and we were like, we have to do everything the exact opposite as everyone else has ever done it in history. It's like, there's some things that people have done for a long time because it works. And then some of it is people did it because they were told to, and it's not good. And so you just have to, I don't know, take each individual thing, as its own individual thing.
Yeah. The only thing I can think of us is David's a homebody. He likes to be at home. He likes to be with the family more than other. He doesn't go out with the guys. It's just his choice. He wants to be at home. And I think like any of y'all that I've met, it's been out, and so many people don't even realize that David exists. He also doesn't really like posting pictures. My son's the same way. I've got good friends. A good friend said to me just last year, and I've known her for years, she's like, until recently, I thought you were a single mother of one. I'm like, no, I'm happily married mother of two, but the boys in our family just don't want to be out there. So David doesn't come to events, doesn't come to things. In fact, I was at something the other day, and usually almost everything now that I get, instead of to David and Joanna Jurgens, oftentimes things will come to Joanna and Lucky because they're so used to seeing Lucky. And one time I actually got him to go with me, and she's 14, and we go into the front desk, and I said, I'm Joanna, and they said, oh, looked at David, said, you must be Lucky's replacement. So that I wish that I could have him with me sometimes. That there's things, I've got some libertarian friends, so I kind of go to events and things. So there are definitely times that I kind of wish I had my husband on my arm, but I also know he would prefer to stay home. So I just kind of work around it. And equally, he doesn't mind if I go hang out with a guy friend that's my date for the night because we trust each other.
Yeah.
That's really important.
I wanted to add on, like when Jake was talking about but the vision of labor is like a huge thing of like when you find your not the the roles that somebody gave you division of labor, but you, as you said, like your wife's better cleaning. So Judd and I both hate cleaning, so we hired a housekeeper. So but in general things like I do most of the cooking, and I do most of the cooking because one, I'm a better cook. Two, I come up with better, more interesting and tasty things to eat. There's a bunch of reasons I tend to do the cooking. But one, Judd is a very, very in that particular element. I become I'm the cooker. I'm the chef. I'm the dominant person in that. I'm going to choose what we eat. I'm going to choose how we eat it, when we eat it, whatever. And Judd is I defer to you. And he's also incredible support staff in that moment because he'll go, oh, you're cooking? And he will immediately be like, which pans can I wash? What do you need me to do? And he's immediately on the every once in a while I'll be like, can you stir this while I do this thing? I'll be like, I'm a little sous chef. We have these cute little things. But it's also sweet that when I'm out of one, if I'm gone for the night, it's so funny because he'll message me, he'll be like, I'm gonna make a dish with mushrooms and kale, because I know you don't like either of those things. And I'm like, yes, go for it. And you make yourself your mushroom and kale thing, you California boy. But it's funny because then there will be instances when I'm like sick. Like if I've had a day, like I got sick, and Judd will come down and he'll be like, hey, how you doing? Like, you hungry? And I'm like, I'm hungry, but I don't want to make anything. Like, I just want to lay down. And he'll be like, okay, I'm going to make this. Is that okay? And I'll be like, yeah, make sure that you get the English muffin toasted just right. And
That's exactly what my wife does.
I'll be like, yes, but remember, I like my English muffins toasted on the 7. And so he'll like, and it's so sweet because like then he'll go and he'll like make this meal for me, and maybe it's not exactly how I would have made it, but I'll be like, this was so wonderful. Like we have things in which we have a strong division of labor, but we also, he's like, I'm gonna cook for you. Like I'm gonna cook for us. Like I would never just like make that be your thing. And it's the same thing with like, work that we do together. Like he's the president of our company. He does most of these particular tasks. And then I was like, hey, you seem to be kind of overloaded. You want me to handle that? And he's like, oh my God, would you? Oh my God, thank you. And like, I love that, like, we have our things that we're best competent at and that we're most efficient at. And we should totally respect the division of labor because it's much more efficient. But like, then to be able to say like, this does not diminish me to like give in this way or get in that way. Like, that's wonderful. Like I'm all about that. Like, be authentic and be good giving and game, in the words of Dan Savage, but like in life, like, hey, I'm here to help you and support you and like, and do whatever I can to make your experience better and mine experience better as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We just naturally find, I don't think we've ever sat down and said, you do the laundry, you clean the bathroom.
Right.
It's just, but we have gravitated toward one person does everything, but it's probably just, we're both about being efficient. This gets done, and then we can both do the other thing if we need to. Like now I used to work from home, and so dinner was pretty much always, even though I was home, he would still understand I'm still working till the same time as he is, and we would split, whoever's cooking that night. Now I don't have a job, and so it's more understood that I'm going to cook dinner most nights, but it naturally works.
Yeah, and you have to just kind of, because my wife cooks most of the meals, but sometimes I'm coming home and I like, you hear the kids in the background like acting like complete maniacs, and just like you can hear her voice. She's just like, "You need me to make dinner?" She's like, "Yes, please." But then I have to sometimes bring the pan to her and be like, "Can you season this?" Like, because like she's very particular about how things get seasoned. Because like I tend to either I do too much or too little. I know how to cook things. I don't know how to season things well. So she has to come in and like do that one step for me. Mm-hmm. But the rest I can usually manage to do. But yeah, it's just, like it's okay to have that division of labor, but like you just don't want to, like, the division of labor shouldn't be what your identity is. Like that should just be like, exactly. and that's where it can become a problem. This is also true, I think, in like parenting, and like, my wife is way more the disciplinarian than I am. Like, I am way more like, I like playing with the kids. When they're hurt, I kiss their boo-boos. I read them bedtime. And my wife can do all that, but like, it just doesn't come as naturally to her. And so like, I've gravitated more towards, kind of like the nurture role, and she's gravitated more towards kind of like the disciplinarian role. But we can both do the other thing if need be. It's like it's not rigid, it's flexible.
Yeah
I think the division of labor in the kitchen thing is the most interesting. First of all, Jacob, because to your point, seasoning is subjective. It's not right or wrong, it's subjective. But I've like defaulted.
Don't
to
tell my wife that. There is a right amount of garlic and salt to put on a dish, and a wrong amount.
There's a wrong amount of soy sauce. That's what Judd had to learn. There's a wrong amount of soy sauce to put on something.
It's
sorry.
Definitely not true. I can also speak from experience.
Wait. I have to interject this. Judd once was adding soy sauce to some fried rice I was making, and he just added so much that like I was like, oh my God, you ruined it. And he's like, oh, that's fine. And then like we both took bites of it, and I was like, oh God. And he was like he did that thing where he like, it's fine. It's totally fine. And I was like, no. And so it's so funny because that happened probably 6 years ago. And to this day, when I'm making, so he'll come in and he'll be like, "Oh, can I stir this?" I'm like, "Don't put soy sauce in it." And it's like it is a joke for like 6 years now, and he knows. Like he'll be like, "Can I put some soy sauce in it?" And I will watch him, and I'll be like, "Yes, stop." And I always tell him to stop before I know he's going to stop, because I know that he will put too much in if I actually, like, if I mean stop when I say stop. So like it is our little bit. It's our little bit. Like we talk about the soy sauce. It's like the running, our running joke is the soy sauce and him putting too much of it in things. Sorry, now you can continue the conversation as it was going.
So I want to switch it up and talk about ways where our philosophy can kind of get in the way of being a good significant other. Starting with actually the question I've been most excited to ask. How do you live and let live when you live together?
Well, I obviously make my wife sign a peace treaty with me, and we divvy up all of the items in our house, and it's all laid out in the contract which item belongs to who. And
Just say big house, separate rooms.
Not in my covenant living room. No.
Dude, separate bedrooms really has, like, Judd and I, like, it's funny because a lot of things Judd and I are completely on the same page on. And then there are the things that we're not, but we'll be like, oh, Judd cares more about this thing than I do. And so I will like defer to his preference on this thing, and then vice versa. Like Judd is like, he grew up like atheist Jew, has never done like any Christmassy things. And I grew up pagan, but I always had a tree. And so like I moved in and I was like, gonna kind of need a little festive stuff happening in this house. And he was like, one room. And like it's this running joke, because I mean he wouldn't give a shit if I put like, you know, 2 trees up or something. But I found a tree that aesthetically worked for both of us. We have a black Christmas tree. Yeah, because we're that couple. But like, but it was funny because we were like, hey, like Avens wants like a festive thing happening in December. Judd doesn't really care. And so like, and then I know that he does not want a bunch of junk around the house that has to be cleaned up later. And so like we find our compromise there. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of things in our lives that, like, you know, he has a strong opinion about, or I have a strong opinion about. And if we both have strong opinions, we have a long conversation about like why we think something's better, or why we think something needs to be done a particular way. And everything's always up to discussion and up for change. But that's a big thing for us, is finding the things that are actually worth like arguing about. Like, are there things that we can't get along unless we solve this? And 90% of the time, they're just things we can be like, you know what, I have birds in my bedroom. He has a cat in his bedroom. Like, cool, we can have birds and cats. Like, great, like works out. But yeah, live and let live works a lot better when you have separate spaces to kind of be your aesthetic. Judd keeps his books in a closet, and I find this very weird. I keep my books on like one wall on a bookshelf, and like, and it's like it's you know, it's decor. And he's like, ugh, I hide my books, and I'm like, I decor with my books. But we have separate rooms.
Tell him to get out of the closet. Matter. It's 2022.
I think he's just embarrassed by how much Ayn Rand is in there, but
oh.
Yeah, well, we won't touch that.
My little objectivist boy, my objectivist man.
No, I think one of the areas where I had the hardest time applying libertarianism in my relationship is less when it comes to like her and me together, but more like how we parent. And it's really tough. We have 4 kids under the age of 7. And so we both believe in like peaceful parenting, no spanking.
How do you have time for podcasting?
It's his only
I sleep
escape.
like 4 hours a night.
Anyway, sorry, I interrupted you.
No, it's fine. But yeah, so we both started out like no spanking, and we still don't spank. And we were also like, we don't want to apply consequences or punishments to our kids unless it's like a natural consequence. And so we tried that out. And I, you know, when the kids are really young, anything kind of works for a little bit. Then it got tougher when they got older, because it's like, hey, you should brush your teeth before you go to bed, but I'm not going to make you. and then they never brush their teeth, then they get cavities, then you have, multiple trips to the dentist and they're in pain. And then you have, and every kid is different. I used to believe that it was all like nurture, and then I had 4 kids, and it's like these are all like their own wildly different individual, like literally from the time they were born. Like as babies, you can see the beginnings of their personality and stuff forming. And so we've kind of like, and we still try to stay true to like the core of like peaceful parenting, because we think it's the more libertarian way to parent. But it's tough with young kids because it's like they are very rebellious. They don't want to do things that are kind of needed for their well-being. And so you as a parent have to try to find a way to like, all right, I don't want to make you do this. I don't want to be the authoritarian. I don't want to like condition you to like blindly follow authority, but also like because like it'll be really cringy if you catch yourself saying things like, well, you have to brush your teeth and I'm going to make you brush your teeth for your own good. That sounds a lot like the state telling you like you have to get X, Y, or Z for your own good or the good of society. And so it's like, it's really tough trying to, on a daily basis, reconcile like dealing with, kind of like, wild. My kids they're good 80% of the time. That 20% of the time, though, for each individual kid, when you have 4 of them and they're all under 7, gets to be a real juggling act. And, some days we do it better than others. I think the solution is sort of like just understanding that you're going to mess up. Like you just do your best and, don't kick yourself too hard for mistakes you make. Reflect on what you do and try to adapt. And this, but it can be tough trying to find that balancing act. And then also trying to work together, because it's like trying to be a unified front with the kids is something that my wife and I think is very important. But the problem is like, we have very different intuitions when it comes to parenting. Like, again, like my wife's the disciplinarian, so she'll be like, if like my oldest picks a fight and with a sibling, and then like gets a warning and then does it again, then I'd be like, okay, because you're having a hard time not fighting right now, you're not going to be able to play the Nintendo Switch for the rest of the day. But then when he comes to me and is like, can I do some chores around the house to get a second chance of playing the Switch? I'm like, well, that sounds completely reasonable. Fine. And then my wife is like, what the heck, Jacob? And then, so, because like to me, it's like, but he's negotiating. That's a good libertarian principle. And then she's like, no, but he's right. Exactly. So yeah, it is really, I think that is the area I have the toughest time trying to like apply a libertarian mindset to when it comes to relationships.
I think one of the times that David has been the most mad at me is, decide when it was time for start to think about time for the kids to have phones, and we both agreed there's not time for them to have a phone yet. And that Lucky especially was always trying to get one and begging for one because she was the little politician. And one day she had been crazy busy all day. It was at one of the conferences, and then we were at a birthday party that night. She was crazy working hard, and it was like outside, and I don't know why I agreed to it, but I told her if she could do a 4-minute plank properly, I would give her a phone. I didn't think she could do it. She was in her swimsuit, surrounded by a bunch of other people, mostly strangers, on concrete, no less, nothing patting her at all. And damn it, she did a 4-minute plank, and I was watching her, making sure she was in perfect position the whole damn time, and there I was, stuck. Now I had promised her this phone. And I'm texting David like, oh shit. And he was mad at me. He didn't talk to me for a couple of days. And it was my fault. I know it was my fault. I was in the wrong. I gave her a way to get this, but I was so sure she couldn't do it. But I do tend to be more like the let him negotiate thing, and more of the libertarian parent. He is more the disciplinarian. Like, if it's time to go to bed, I'll go to them and say, okay, good night, I'm going to bed. And do I have to go to bed? No, you can stay up if you want. I don't care what you do, as long as you don't disturb me. And then like 10 minutes later, David might come to bed and he's like, well, I told your daughter to go to bed. I'm like, I don't care what she does.
Well, it's like, honey, it's like, we just tell people don't hurt people, don't take their stuff. The kids aren't hurting anyone. She's like, they're hurting me because I can't sleep. Tell them to go. And so it's,
If I can't hear him, I don't care.
right. And I'm just, yeah, exactly. But I think my theory is that having that kind of yin yang thing going on helps the kids to be kind of, well balanced in the end. Because they get a little bit of both and can, get those negotiation skills, but also learn to deal with harsh consequences that they can't get out of. So
I'm much more likely to let them make their own mistakes and figure things out, whereas he's the helicopter parent. Like, he's the one incessantly checking their grades on the portal, and like he knows their grades before they even do. He's like, what happened here? What happened there? And I'm kind of like, I'll get involved if it's something big, but in general, I'm like, oh, well, consequences.
See, I always like the theory of letting kids, when they're fighting, solve their own problems, and that works sometimes. Sometimes it doesn't. The time it worked really well was when I think my oldest was like 5 and my daughter was 3. No, I think it was like 6 and 4. But my oldest kept on like picking on my daughter, who's like 2 years younger than him, and my wife Bria kept trying to get them to stop, and I was just like, how about we try it this way? How about we just tell Daniel, if he keeps on instigating things with her, she's going to get upset, and that could have consequences he doesn't like. Well, one day, the consequences reared their ugly head, and she got mad, and she went and started punching him and hitting him. And my son is all bark and no bite. Like, he'll be angry and he'll yell and he'll be upset, but like, then it's funny because I just like, I walk into the room and I hear him crying, and I see again, she's 2 years younger than him, and yet she's on top of him. He's on the floor, and she's just hitting him over and over again, and he's laying on the ground crying, and I'm just like laughing and also like, should I stop her?
Damn libertarians
glorifying
violence.
I had a real,
I don't know, but like after that though, he got a lot better about teasing her and picking on her. So I think it worked.
I had a real exercise in the live and let live together last night. My wife pestered me into agreeing to basically do half of Christmas last night. She just like could not wait. It wasn't her own present. It was like mine and our son's. She like refused to wait the extra 6 days until Christmas, and so we opened like probably 4 to 6 presents each. We like spaced it out through the Christmas Carol, so like every time the clock struck, we like paused the movie and opened some presents, and then like went back to watching the movie. And so that kind of like made it drag out a little bit longer, and it was always really cute because my son, who's 3, every time the clock struck, he would, oh, presents. It was just like, it was great. But I was like, this is like, if somebody on the internet was like, we open presents whenever we want throughout the time, like, buy them throughout the entire month of December and just like give them to our kids when we buy them and whatever. I'm like, okay, sure. If Jacob wants to do that with his kids, I'm like, all right, sure. Like, it's weird, but like, I don't give a crap. Like, I am.
Anarchy means no rules.
Right. I am fully bought into the live and let live concept, and it's helped me a lot with like my anger management issues that I had growing up. Because I can just not care with most people. Even if you're a really good friend of mine that I care about, there's very few things that you could do and we could disagree on where like I really, really care and it will really drive a wedge through our friendship. If you want to parent your kids in a different way than I think is okay, as long as you're not like a horrible abusive parent, then you're probably not somebody I really care about anyway, right? So I've been really good at that concept lately, and it's helped me overcome a lot. But then, when it's your life and your house and like your kids and the whole thing is connected to you, it makes it a lot more difficult. And I've tried to not care in moments, and then I'm like, no, I still care. Like, I can't just passive aggressive my way through this and just pretend that it doesn't exist.
You ever hear the expression, the worst person you know just made a really good point? I had. I'm not
Ouch.
talking about you, David. No, I'm not talking about you. Sorry.
You too.
No. I had this
It's like when a
moment.
politician says something good.
Yeah. Well, so I had this moment the other day when I heard a quote from Ben Shapiro, and I was just like, I was like, it's Ben Shapiro, but I was like, you know what? He's got a point here. He said, families are like socialism. He's like, because like everything in the family is kind of shared, and you know, you don't go around caring about what other people do, but you care a whole lot about like what happens in your family. And I was like, you know, I mean, credit where credit's due. You know,
I've said
families.
that on Facebook before. I'm like, Ben Shapiro's stealing my ideas.
Well, yeah. He's also no, it's all right. But yeah, no, I
It's redeemable.
But no, I think, you know, that yeah, libertarianism is a philosophy about how we interact with the world, and there are like, I think at the heart of libertarianism is like we care about peace, we care about cooperation, we care about, you know, humanity and a love for everybody, and those things translate to, you know, being in a relationship with somebody else and having a family together if you want to do that. But the nitty gritty, but the parts about like live and let live, I mean, kind of, but it's a bit more complicated when it comes to like, you know, like you might not live and let live with your partner doing certain things the same way you would with like a stranger on the street or even a friend. Like there are things that like, I mean, if my friend decided to like go out partying until 2:00 in the morning and then come home, it's like, well, I don't care. I don't live with my friend. If my wife did that, I'd be like, why'd you do that? You know, I mean, if it was done like, you know, I mean, you know what I mean? Like if it was done without communicating and stuff. So there's there's different rules for certain relationships, and that can sometimes, I think, trigger our libertarian sensibilities, but yeah, that's that, I think.
It's funny, Judd and I actually have that a lot with them. Like, I mean, relationships should have deal breakers. Like, I mean, like, and obviously as you get in a relationship, you're like, okay, like to make this work, right? So like, let's hopefully either of us pick up a habit that's a deal breaker, or, you know, like, and you know, and I've teased Judd all the time because I'm like, look, we're in this for life, but like, I'm like, you know, if you ever hit me, I'd leave in a second. And he was like, well, of course. Like, and I'm like, cool. Like, I'm glad we're on the same page there, right? But it's funny because we'll talk about that we'll talk about little like things where like we'll watch someone, like something else happen in someone else's relationship, and I'll be like, I'm not saying you can never do that. I'm saying that I don't plan on being here if you ever do that. And he's like, yeah, I like, and so our live and let live is very much like, I'm not trying to control you, but my life is like this, and I will work with you to try to make our lives like this together. But if these things come up, these are things that like, I do not want to live the kind of life that involves this. And that was something, what's funny is when Judd and I when we first started dating, we were in an open relationship and we could do whatever we wanted. And there was another woman that he was involved with. And I was like, I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm just saying that I don't really want her drama in my life. So like, you can keep doing whatever you're doing with her, but like, I'm probably going to make myself scarce. And like, he thought about that. And he's like, definitely would rather have you than this. Like, there's drama here, there's problems here. And he was like, all right, just so you know, I ended things with her. And I was like, awesome. Like, I didn't tell you like, you can't sleep with somebody. No, I just said like, my life ain't about that drama. And
right.
And
it's setting boundaries rather than being controlling. And I think
yeah, that is the thing. Is like, we set boundaries for ourselves. We set like, these are deal breakers for me. Like my life will not involve a partner that's screaming at me or hitting me. And so like, don't do that. We're good. And like, you know, my life will not involve these things, and like, cool. And so it's interesting because we'll like see other people's relationships and be like, oh, they can do that, but don't, please let's not do that. Wait, I just want to quickly, we've been talking about so many great things, and obviously I have nothing to contribute to the parenting thing because I don't have kids. But I do anticipate that it'll be an interesting thing because I was raised with peaceful parenting and homeschooling, and those are two things I deeply value. And Judd is like, cool, that matters to you. so we'll go with what you want to do. But it's funny because I'm like, I need you to be like converted, like on that particular topic. Like I'll need to know that you get the, what I'm going for here. The nice thing is if I explain like a concept to him and I go like, this is why I'm doing this way, he typically will be like, okay, no, that makes sense. And I'm going to conform. By the way, peaceful parenting, brushing teeth. My brother used to challenge me to toothbrushing competitions. He'd be like, who can get their mouth clean faster in 60 seconds? And so he'd like set a little timer. Like the stupidest things can cause I did not like brushing my teeth. And I discovered that I'm very competitive. And so all you have to do is convince me that I'm going to win if I brush my teeth faster than my brother.
We do that, and that works for like 2 of our kids, and the other 2 are like, I don't care. So it's like we have to, and that's it is a good idea. And it's like we have to. The problem is when you have so many kids, they all respond to different things, and so we almost have to split up. It's like division of labor again. It's like, all right, I'll get these 2 to bed, and you get these 2 to bed, because they have like they respond to different things. But yeah, no, I think that crap. I had something else I was going to respond to the things you were saying, and out of my brain.
Boundaries.
I wanna mention something, Avens, because you said talking about boundaries and deal breakers, and my wife on our second date, I believe it would have been officially. It was a very similar date to yours and Judd's first date of just like, talking up until the sun is starting to come up and you're like, oh shit, it's we didn't do the sleep thing and we both have to do the work thing today. But she made me go down through, we basically just went back and forth of like every possible deal breaker that each other has, like anything we might figure out later down the road as we get to know each other that would make us like call it quits and this have all been a waste of time. So just like get it all out open at the beginning. And it was a rough, very strange conversation, but it was great in the end because it basically the reason behind it was a conversation about like whether or not this was just going to be a couple weeks while I was in town working and we were hanging out, or if this was going to be something that stretched on, if she was going to come with me, if we were going to do long distance, something like that, if we're actually going to make it work. So if we're going to put in that kind of effort, no need knowing about deal breakers ahead of time and still, going into it. So, I talked about my criminal history, my, I told her that I'm probably on a federal watch list just due to the show and the social media and, working with Spike and all the other things that I do. I'm like, probably a really minor, like low, but there's definitely a strong chance that I'm on at least one. And she's like, is it weird if that's kind of hot? I was like, all right, we found a keeper. But, and obviously we talked about, she has a 3-year-old son and, we talked about how that works. And like, we got all of that out within 72 hours of meeting each other. So that, what's funny is like we made the mistake of being very confident in that conversation and being like, oh yeah, that's fine. Everything was not a deal breaker until it actually had to come up in everyday life. And it's like, that wasn't a deal breaker in theory, but now that it's a thing every day, now that like you're getting pulled over and it's just like a minor thing. It should have been just like a warning ticket or a fix-it ticket, but instead it's like I'm in handcuffs because I have a suspended license. That's like a whole other thing that you have to deal with. So, but it was great in theory and in concept.
Judd and I had a big one of one of the reasons that Judd and I realized that we were a good match is because we have similar levels of risk tolerance. And that was like a big thing for us because we're both entrepreneurs. We're both, we're both very political. So we both there's public, like us making, very, very controversial statements online, us doing, these sorts of things. Like we want a very comfortable life, but we also like, you know, the fact that we've started like 3 companies, and like honestly our weed company in 2017, like that was a high risk endeavor that did not pay off. And I was like, all right, well, like I'm down with taking a risk. And now you just gotta like, I'm totally okay with the fact that we made this risk, but now we have to pivot into something successful. And we have, and it's great. But it's funny because, you know, Judd, I think it was like 2 years ago, my Valentine's Day card was very sweet. He said something about how like he said that like he can't imagine any woman tolerating the level of risk he's willing to take in like his professional life and his, you know, and just the things that he wants to do. And I was like, well, we both are like very ambitious, and so we're both like willing. We know that there's a certain amount of risk that has to come with that level of ambition, but like I think it's so valuable for us to recognize that like that worked for us. And like you might meet someone and have lots of compatibility, but if you don't have a good way of of feeling good about the risks that your partner's going to take, you know, regarding business or money or anything else like that, like you either have to have a tolerance for their level of risk. Judd is definitely even more risk tolerant than I am, but I'm comfortable with it. And it's one of the reasons we're not married, so that like if his plans, if his, you know, well carefully crafted plans go to shit, I'm legally protected. But these are the kinds of things that like that I think a lot of couples, I wish that like, you know, like love is not all you need. Like love is great, but also like having that trust, having that like having similar levels of like risk tolerance, having similar levels of like whatever values you have. You can have all sorts of values, but you have to make sure that they line up, that they work together, and they're complementary. They don't have to be the same, but they have to be complementary. And that was a big thing for us to realize was compatible. But that like I've had exes who were like disrespectful to me because of my level of like, when we were together, I was like, I want to do these things that are risky because I think there's gonna be a great payoff. And they were like, oh, why would you want to do that? And I was like, okay, this is not the right relationship for me, because I need to be with somebody who's like, who challenges this particular thing that I want challenged too. But yeah, I think that's a huge thing in relationships to find, is that partner that has that same tolerance as you.
I watched a great movie that touched on the like love isn't all you need in a really comical way that I just want to say real quick. It was like a Romeo and Juliet spinoff. I think it's called like Rosalind or something like that. I don't
I've heard
remember.
about this. I haven't seen it.
But it's like Romeo's ex, and she's like trying to win him back throughout the whole thing, and then turns out she actually just like helps him run away with Juliet and everything. And the last scene is Romeo and Juliet like they actually both faked their deaths and survived, but no one knew it, so that's why the story is the way that it is. That's giving away the ending, sorry, spoilers. But the last scene is them like sailing off into the sunset and just like running out of things to talk about 4 minutes in. And just like, well, just 7 hours left of this boat ride, and then the rest of our lives. And it's just like, yeah, that's why you don't marry somebody you only knew for 48 hours. Like, duh.
Funny thing about that.
I
love that though.
So one thing we talked about on the kind of positive side, but I feel like, at least in my experience, it can draw a negative, is kind of, again, that breaking of binaries thing. Sometimes you just have to make a decision. And have you guys ever had trouble because of your traditional out-of-the-box thinking where you struggle to just, like, make the decision instead of, like, well, maybe there's a third option?
I don't know. What do you want to do? I don't know. What do you want to do? I don't know what. Yeah. Or sometimes there's the angry version of that where it's like you're having a disagreement, and then it's like, fine, we'll do it your way. Like, no, we're gonna do it your way. No, because neither one of us wants to force the other one to do it the way that we want to do it. And so, yeah, a little bit of just maybe like executive dysfunction sometimes.
Yeah. Very
Yeah,
early.
we're kind of going through something similar like that with our kids have been at the same school since kinder, and Lucky is going into 10th grade and she really wants to leave. She hates her school. And so he's much more of your traditional, just get it over with, just stay. And I'm like, well, let her think outside of the box. Maybe she's been looking at some non-traditional options that she wants to pursue. And he hasn't said no, but you can tell I'm much more open to something different other than staying at the kind of sure thing school. So it's just something we're still trying to work through and figure out ourselves.
Yeah, I know a lot of times my wife will like present me, especially because, so we did a very small wedding that was just the two of us in the woods behind my parents' house. So for our 1-year anniversary, we're planning on doing like an actual like vow renewal ceremony where friends and family can come and reception and the whole nine. And so she keeps coming to me with, just, do you like this? Yes or no? And it's like, well, sure, but we can't have all of the things that you saw on Pinterest. And it can't just be a yes or a no, because I don't have any reasonable reason to say no to this. But I'm also sure that there might be something better that I would want to choose if you were giving me like, well, these are the centerpiece things that I like. Choose between these 5, or give me a top 2 and I'll pick the final one. Something like that I could work with. But just like, do you like this? Like, yeah. But I don't know. I just want to like either have the conversation and like pick a centerpiece and do the whole thing, or just like don't talk to me about it. And the like, well, we need to pick a this. It's like, cool.
Well, do you care?
Thanks for that addition to this moment. But like, we're not solving the problem in this moment, and we ruined what could have been just a nice moment of silence.
I do think that Judd and I will have a lot of just kind of, like that kind of just efficiency of decision making of just kind of like, okay, like we can do this or this. Like, what do you think? It's never anything like super important, because if it's like super important, it's going to be something we really like, we really deep dive into. But I'll often find that like that open-ended question can just be like, nope, that's not useful to either of us. Because Judd also has CEO brain, so sometimes he just needs to hear he just needs to tell me a yes or no about something. So I just make it really easy. I'll be like, 3 options for dinner. What do you want? Like, and he's like, that one. And sometimes I'll be like, 3 options for dinner. This one involves us sitting down and eating together. This one you can take to your office because I know you're really busy. This one, let's watch The Crown while we eat it. and literally like he'll be like, oh, well then in that case, I'd like this one. It's really funny because I've just gotten very used to like just giving options in that way. But that's it's mostly just petty shit. We've had things in our lives that we've had to kind of, go, hey, like, this is making me really uncomfortable. Like, this choice is going to make me really uncomfortable. So like, we really need to like hash this out, because it's really like, it's bordering on something that I just don't want in my life. So we really have to discuss it. And honestly, when that happens, we typically, that isn't often time. Like when that occasion happens, we will often utilize something like mushrooms or something to dive into it, so we can talk about our insecurities about something, or about like what we're not okay with, and really feel each other's perspectives, and then go like, okay, can we come to a conclusion now that we've like really laid it all out? So I think that's really what we like. That'll sometimes be what we have to do, but that's been very beneficial to us, so it works out.
Drugs are helpful. For sure.
They can be. That's why I have an entire company dedicated on getting the access out.
Mm-hmm. That was actually one of the things that came up during the aforementioned deal breakers conversation. Because my wife, Casey, when we met, was very, very against most drug usage. And, she kind of like understood that a lot of what she knew about cannabis was bullshit. But everyone that she knew that used cannabis fell into the stereotype anyway. even though it's not all encompassing, it still was most of her experience. And so even that one she had kind of negative opinion of, and like anything like cocaine or Molly or anything down those lines was just like, fuck no. And so I told her in that conversation, I'm like, I am someone who likes to do hard drugs and psychedelics at least once a month. Like that is something that I do. Like I either take acid or mushrooms, usually mix it with like Molly or something like that. Like that's just something that I do. And she had to like, come to terms with that. And she was actually like, that's something that I don't give her enough credit for. She flipped that switch very quickly to be like understanding about it. And like at first it was like, okay, I just don't like really want to like see it or be around it too much. The first time I tripped after we met, she was at her apartment, I was at the Airbnb I was staying in for work, and it just like wasn't really a thing. But a few months later, we tripped around each other for the first time, and actually on our wedding night. And that was awesome. That was her idea that I do acid on our wedding night. And that was great. It was a great idea. Fantastic experience.
If I ever have a wedding, I would do that. Oh yeah.
It was honestly really great. Cause she like took a nap for like the middle section and the peak. Cause like she wasn't on drugs. So I stayed up the whole night. And she like kind of took a nap in the middle and then came woke back up a little bit before sunrise. So we went and watched the sunrise. But she's been like really awesome and understanding about that. And now she's kind of like come around to like some edibles sometimes, because like mostly for the pain, but also the stress relief. And her on edibles plus me on like psychedelics we haven't tried yet, but I think is what we're doing for New Year's. And so like we'll see how that vibes out, like because she basically trips on edibles. She's got like a terribly low tolerance, so it's great. Super cheap. But on the like topic of drugs, easy switch over. I know that you don't have to be of like a libertine mindset to be a libertarian, and I know that not everybody in this show is of that mindset, but even those of us that are more like right-leaning conservative libertarians still tend to be, at least pro-LGBT in the legal sense, and a little bit more sex positive and a little bit more understanding in those ways. How have you guys managed mixing that with a monogamous relationship, where you can still talk about sex and have friends and be that kind of like open personality, but still be committed and not crossing any lines?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
I know. I was gonna say I don't know if I understand it either.
I'm not attracted to any other men or any other women that my husband or any non-binaries.
Yeah, I guess I've honestly that one might be a little bit more of a, I don't want to say generational problem, but something that like people younger than myself have been a lot more. There's just so many rules going into a relationship about like who you can talk to and like how close you can be and like what you can do. And like my wife is fairly like open and understanding, but like I've led a very like libertine-esque lifestyle for the last few years, and especially having a bunch of libertarian friends. I am 100% straight, and I have like kissed male friends on the mouth on dares and stuff. Straight? Like, within the last year. Like that's just like, that's the kind of stuff that I'm used to. And then now, I know that kind of stuff isn't appropriate as a married man. Like, but
what's the ultimate test of your straightness if you can kiss a man and not get an erection? I mean, that's how you tell.
I mean, I promise I did not. It was, it was Sasha Cohen, so there was no possibility there.
Well, David, to your point, like I think that every relationship is going to have their definitions of what is appropriate, what the partners find comfortable. And so the thing is, like, I know couples that, are super, like, they're super monogamous. They're very, they are very, monogamous and straight and whatever else, and they and you know, and so they would be like, I think part of it is a level of trust, you know, like, are you comfortable with your partner having, you know, opposite gender friends? And I mean, I personally would like really chafe at, like, if my partner was like, I don't trust you with your friends, like, fuck that. Like, like, you know, I like, we haven't established trust, but, you know, people's comfort level can differ in terms of like, you know, do you spend time alone with friends of an opposite gender or friends that you might be potentially attracted to, or do you you know, are there situations in which you might be cuddly or do drugs with them, or, you know, or do something that might be considered more intimate without like having sex. And one of the things is that, so for years, like Judd and I are both, you know, we both take photos in the Liberty Movement. We're both like, for years we were traveling together, and then our company started up, and I can do a lot of my work remotely and Judd can't. And so I was going to Anarchapulco, I was going to, you know, Liberty Forum, I was going to all these different conferences and Freedom Fest and stuff, and I go by myself, and Judd totally trusts me. That's totally cool. But I have a very good friend who's like I call him my platonic boyfriend, and he's my friend Yakov, and Yakov Markel, and he and I go all the time to things together. Like, we'll share a hotel room. I mean, we have separate beds, we share a hotel room. We like, he'll like, he's buying me drinks all night. We have a very like close relationship that that like a couple of people have been like, oh, are you dating him? I'm like, no. Like, but I can understand how like somebody who didn't see me and Judd would go like, oh, well, it looks like you have like a conference boyfriend. And Judd and I are very comfortable with that, but I can understand why people have to find their lines in their relationships and be able to communicate and say like, this is okay, this isn't okay. You know, if I go to Burning Man and I'm like at my camp and I take some Molly, the chances that I'm going to end up in a big cuddle puddle with a bunch of friends that include men, where we might snuggle and like, we won't make out, but like, there might be like kind of like, we had to establish, Judd and I had to establish like what his comfort level was with that. And I was like, I'm not going to fuck somebody else. I'm not going to, you know, I'm not even going to fucking tongue kiss somebody, but I might snuggle up with somebody and then go like, oh, you know what? Like, this is my boundary. And other people can have different boundaries. It's just about making sure that in your relationship, you communicate that boundary, and that your partner is comfortable that you will respect that boundary of theirs, even though it's you doing the thing. Like, if you're doing an action, my partner's boundary is this, so I'm not going to do this thing that would make them uncomfortable. And so I'm feeling like maybe that's where you were trying to go with that. But I think it's less about whether marriage requires that you be monogamous, and rather what's your relationship, what's your terms. And if your terms are, you know, you don't have intimate situations of any kind with a partner, with a person that you might be romantically attracted to, then that's your line. If your line is don't fuck somebody else, then that's your line. If your line is do not create an emotional affair with somebody else, then that's your line. But people, what I do dislike in mainstream monogamous conversations, or mainstream just like relationship, oh, we got married, is people assuming what those boundaries are. Because people do, they'll be like, well, the boundary is this. And I'm like, well, is that like your just default? Because like, if that is the default, you should probably have a conversation to make sure your partner agrees with that default.
Everyone.
Yeah, like I used to live and work in Las Vegas, and the number of guys who would like, you know, be like, well, it's in Vegas, so it doesn't matter if I make out with a stripper. Like, you know, it's like, well, wait, did your wife agree to that? Because if your wife agreed to that, then great. But if your wife didn't agree to that, then I'm pretty sure, like, because I used to do hostessing, so I used to like host people who were like going to strip clubs or bachelor party, whatever. And like the guys would be like, well, this is the rule in my house. I'd be like, is it really? Because like I respect the hell out of you if you and your wife have that rule. And I encountered one dude like who went to a strip club, and I was hosting his party, and his wife was there, and his wife was like, well, he can do this but not this. And I was like, you're a very progressive lady. Okay then. like all right, like good for you. I'm glad you have a happy marriage of 10 years, you have twins, but great. And if your rule is that like he can pay a prostitute to blow him, then cool, that's your line. Like, good for you. I don't think I'd share that law. I don't think that would be my line. But like, as long as you guys communicate the lines, I don't have a problem with anyone having a consensual agreement about what their boundaries are, whether those boundaries are strict or those boundaries are loose.
Yeah.
That's, for me, it's like,
absolutely.
screw you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyway, that's
That's stuff my wife and I went through. You know, I'm more, you know, I'm more open to the idea of having opposite sex friends than my wife is. And you know, when we were really young, she used to have a lot of platonic male friends, and I didn't really have a lot of platonic female friends, but I wasn't really against the idea. And then when I started getting into the libertarian circles, there was this one girl in our local libertarian area who was like this staunch atheist objectivist, and I'm of course like the, you know, staunch Christian anarchist, and so we would kind of like debate back and forth, and that's all we would do. But my wife was not happy with how much I was private messaging with, just in her mind, she's like, you're messaging this one girl a lot, and you know, not messaging me as much, you know, as you're messaging her. And I was like, okay, well, I can cut this back. She's like, well, why do you have to private message her at all? And I'm like, well, I'm not really, we're not like sharing each other, you know, we're just debating. I was like, I'm trying to convince her that atheism is stupid, and she's trying to convince me that Christianity is stupid. And I was like, I'm not even going to touch the objectivism because that's a whole different thing. But yeah, but the but yeah, so you know, when that started, I didn't handle it well, because instead of hearing that my wife was sharing with me that she was uncomfortable and respecting that discomfort and putting her feelings above mine, you know, because like I don't need to debate this person. I don't need to be messaging them as much. I just went to like, oh, you're trying to control me. Like, you're trying to tell me I can't ever have friends or any associations with someone of the opposite sex, and you don't trust me. But I came to realize, like, no, it wasn't a matter of trust. It was just a matter of like, it violated her personal boundaries. Now, maybe we hadn't had that conversation before, so I didn't know about it. As I came to understand it, you know, I died to myself, and I came to respect it. Stopped messaging that. I said, well, I said, is it okay if I debate her if it's like on a Facebook post or it's in like a group chat? But I'll stop private messaging her because it's just your personal boundary. You don't like that, and it's not a matter of trust. It's just a matter of that it's just something that doesn't work for you. And so, yeah, you know, sometimes again, it's that intrinsic, you know, we all have that libertarian streak of like, we don't want to be controlled. And it's just in relationships, you have to learn that boundaries aren't the same as being controlled. You have to respect each other's boundaries.
I think one thing that helped me there is when I first met David, I had a male best friend. And like, to the point that it was not a big deal to sleep over at each other's house. Again, not even in the same room, like on a couch or something, but he was my best friend. And that was just how it was when I met David. And it was non-negotiable. Like, Mark's my friend. We're going to go on vacation. We're going to do this, go do that. And so that we just kind of started out on that foot, that I'm going to have opposite gender friends. And it does come down to a trust thing.
It was funny when Judd and I started dating. Like, obviously, like we were open. We had and Judd like takes like incredible photographs in the Liberty movement, and in, you know, we live in Los Angeles. He takes incredible photos in the Hollywood crowd and stuff, and that makes him extremely popular with other women. And it was really funny because like I'm not the jealous type. I'm not the like, but and obviously I didn't even have a claim when I first started dating him. But it was funny because like there was a little bit of like, we would go somewhere and he'd be taking photos, and then like some girl would be like, oh my God, take photos of me. And he would be like, hey, yeah, of course I'm gonna take photos of you. And like, and I would be like, and like, and it was funny because like I would just kind of be like, yeah, I'm your date, and now this woman is like, all like, oh my God, that's such a cute photo. Get my number so I can you send it to me? And like, and there would just be so much of that, and it drove me insane. Like, because I was just like, all right, I've just started dating this guy. He's clearly very popular. I'm fine with that. I'm very popular as well. But it was a little bit of like a thing. And it was funny because when we started dating, we started getting more serious. He was like, look, like I'm choosing to be with you. I really enjoy like photographing, like going to an event, photographing, and like I like getting a good picture of women, and when women flirt with me, they pose better for photographs. So I'm just saying, this is something that like I'd like to keep happening. And I was like, okay, like, and we had a conversation where I was like, all right, well, you're choosing to be with me, like you're like this kind of this flirtatious energy during, you know, you taking photographs at an event, it makes you feel good about yourself, and you're not taking these girls home. Like, this is not a problem, but like this is just a thing you get to do, the same way that like I go up with guy friends and they buy me drinks and I go, you're so sweet, oh my god, thank you. Like, that doesn't need to mean shit either. So like when we kind of established that, like now we go to events and I'll be like, oh, she's cute, go take some pictures, and he'll be like, okay, all right, and like nothing's gonna happen there, but like we just realized that like we enjoy stroking each other's egos a little bit, and that's again something that like some people could be totally uncomfortable with. In our relationship, I was like, you know what, my man likes to feel desired, and I like to know that he's desired, and I like to know that he comes back to me. So that was a comfort level for us. And I totally understand people who don't have that, but you know, it's like, again, it's about finding your thing, you know. For me, I was like, I'm not giving up my male friends, and I don't want you to give up the thing that like you like taking photos and having cute girls go like, oh my god, my photo looks so nice, thank you. So great, you have that. That's totally not a threat to me.
I think with us, it's like David is always invited, right? There's never a time that I'll say, I'm going to go to, you know, whatever concert with X guy friend and you can't come. I always, even if David doesn't like to go out, and he would hate it if I made him come, but it's kind of like, you can come if you want. I would love for you to come. And he's like, no, go, please go with the other guy so I don't have to. So it's kind of like that. And the conferences, every event I go to, he is welcome to come with me, and he knows that, but you know, it's a fate worse than death to him in many cases.
It was a major point of contention early on in my relationship that I wasn't as jealous as she wanted me to be. Because she felt like I didn't care about her, because I was kind of, you know, trying to carry that, like, you know, live and let live mindset into the relationship, because in all reality it was the only way that I was getting a whole lot of progress on my anger management issues. And so, you know, that's just how I operated in relationships. And my last relationship was fairly short, so it didn't build up any like really major contentious points, and it was an open relationship, so there was even though I was the only one that actually acted on it, and it was only like very briefly, like 2 times, but there was the level of trust, because in an open relationship the rule is communication. So like if I wanted to sleep with somebody that I was talking to, I would tell my girlfriend, and she would understand that, you know, this is somebody that I am attracted to. So if I hadn't told her that, she didn't have to worry, and vice versa. And that for me like held a lot of comfort, that like, you know, there was like a couple guys that like she actually did like, but nobody else did I have to worry about or think anything about. And in a monogamous relationship, you know, if you did have feelings for somebody else, you'd be lying to me about it and hiding it. And that was kind of something that I had to get used to again, was like the behind people's backs and the lack of trust there, because I was used to just being able to be like, oh yeah, she's kind of hot, and like it wasn't really a problem. But like you know, so my wife would be, you know, do you think this way about this person? It's like, oh no, she's ugly. Like, but she doesn't believe me. And so, but on the other direction, you know, I'm the kind of person who, you know, if I trust you that you don't like this person, I really don't care if you know, like you guys are saying, like go to a convention with somebody or go to a concert with somebody, like fucking link arms and skip down the sidewalk, go into the store. I don't care. Like that's, you know, I mean, Joanna, the way that you and I were kind of hanging out at South by, I feel like there are plenty of people who would feel like that crossed so many lines, that like you're a married woman, you should not have been like anywhere as near as like friendly with me as you were, but like it was okay. But like my wife expected me to be like, no, like get away from him, you're mine, and like she felt like I didn't care. And so that was something that, you know, I'm still working on explaining to her, and like not making that a point for her insecurity is just like, I care about you and I love you and you're mine, and that's why I don't mind if you know, have fun with somebody else. I want you to have the most fun possible, not like regardless of whether or not I'm around for it.
Yep. Hey, speaking of boundaries and stuff in relationships, if you guys want to keep going, that's all cool. But I always tell my wife, you know, a cutoff, and I told her that my cutoff was going to be 10 because she wants to spend time with me and stuff tonight. So it was really cool being on, though, and talking with you all and going into all these different things. So thanks for having me. And but yeah, I do got to get going. So
thanks for coming.
Yeah.
Tell people where to find you real quick before you hop off. If you
so Twitter at Biblical Anarchy, and you can go to biblicalanarchypodcast.com or daniel318.com, and you can find all my stuff there. And yeah, thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Cool. Bye. Yep. Bye. See you guys.
My wife is probably going to get similarly annoyed here pretty soon, so I'll have you guys do the same thing. Joanna, how can people find you and what you're working on, and Liberty Live and all the other things?
Sure. So Liberty Live, we will be launching next year. Look for all the cool socials and everything. That we're basically working on taking the Liberty message mainstream to events like South by Southwest. Like you mentioned, you and I were there last year, kind of laying the groundwork, checking it out. I'm really excited about that. So I will be screaming at everyone to put that out next year. Exactly. It's going to be awesome. But Joanna in Texas on Twitter and Instagram is probably the best way. Joanna in Texas spelled out, and love to talk to people.
All right. And Avens, how can people learn how to trip better and grow shrooms?
Well, the easiest way to find any of my stuff is my website is literally avens.me. That's avens.me. And that links to all my things. I have a Substack. It's avens.substack.com. I'm on Facebook as Avens O'Brien. And then I even link in my Substack, I link to my company, but we are the little shroom mushroom. But we are Advanced Mycology, and we have a grow your own mushroom kit. So you can purchase it for $60. You add whatever kind of mushroom culture or spores you want to put inside, and you grow your very own mushrooms in 6 to 8 weeks. And yes, it's optimized for psychedelic mushrooms. But if anyone has any questions, they can find me on Twitter as Avens O'Brien, all one word. If you have specific tripping questions, you can find me on Instagram as either Avens O'Brien or Your Trip Sister. And basically just like avens.me will link you to all the things. So that's the easiest thing to remember.
All right. I'm really excited. My business partner started growing one of your mushroom kits a few months ago, and it will be ready for harvest like the day after my birthday. So like part of it's going to be a birthday present to me, and I'm like, yes, mushrooms.
Oh my goodness.
A week ago, and he sent me a picture, and I was like, gosh, that's a lot more than I was expecting you to be able to get out of that. So yeah, everybody go check out Avens.
This is how we do it.
Check out Liberty Live when it launches, and check out Biblical Anarchy and all of the other podcasts that Jacob is a part of. Ladies, thank you so much for coming on. This was awesome.
David, thank you for having us.
So much fun. Thanks, David.
All right, guys, we will be back here on the 26th talking what's next with Justin O'Donnell, Reed Coverdale, and Stacia Wilson. Check us back out for that. Until then, keep up the fight.